All right, well, welcome. This is Kim Klingler with the Columbia Pike Revitalization Organization, columbiapike.org, and we're very excited to have everyone here today. We've been doing these connecting and collaborating sessions, and this is our third one. And really, this one is about making connections across the county. And what we've noticed during these sessions is people start chatting. So feel free to use the chat function for comments, for recommendations, for questions, because that's how we will actually ask all of our participants and our speakers questions today. So again, thank you for joining us. It's been a busy year. I've been on board now for 13 months. And I will tell you the last 10 weeks have been incredibly interesting, challenging, but have also been exciting because it's actually taught us a lot about silver linings and new opportunities. What we're going to go over today quickly is just CPRO's response to COVID-19. I'm going to introduce you to the speakers because that's why you are here today, and it's actually wonderful that they've been able to join us because everyone is busy, 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 and so please thank them for taking time out of their day today. We will then do questions and answers. Please put your questions in the chat window. We've also received some questions ahead of time. And Amanda, do we have anyone on the phone today? No one on the phone. Okay, so no one has to unmute. Excellent. And then we'll just talk about staying connected. We are going to do more of these sessions, so if you also have ideas of who you would like to hear from and who you would like to connect with, please do let us know. First off, as I mentioned, the past about 7 weeks, 6-7 weeks into this, we launched a few new programs at Columbia Pike. Buy a Nurse Lunch was extremely successful, raising over $40,000. We are now delivering lunches to nurses at Virginia Hospital Center, Arlington Pediatric Center, and Mary Marshall Assisted Living. We're helping our businesses on the Pike with technical assistance, whether it's grant writing, website, putting their menus on Facebook, or doing print jobs. And you'll notice if you drive the Pike 3.5 miles, all the orange banners. These are the folks who are open for business, and we want people to know that they are. Over the last, I'd say 2 to 4 weeks, we keep pivoting. People really wanted to provide money, but we couldn't buy any more lunches for nurses. They were telling us, Kim, we're going to put on weight, and we don't want to do that. So we pivoted to feeding our families. This is, you buy boxes of produce for families. They are delivered by farmers. So we're keeping our farmers in business, and we're bringing fresh produce to families on Columbia Pike. We also did our form-based code position paper because Columbia Pike, that is how we actually determine what is built on the Pike. And we do want to thank the Chamber for supporting us in that venture. And then at the bottom of the screen, you see the 2 other connecting sessions that we had. And so we really want to thank our earlier speakers for helping us through this process, for ironing out some of the bugs, and really bringing you all here today. So without further ado, I'd love to introduce our speakers today. We have Elizabeth with the Clarendon Alliance, Ginger with Lee Highway Alliance, Scott with the Arlington Chamber of Commerce. Has Allan joined us yet? Wonderful. Allan with the Arlington County Civic Federation, Les with Arlington Community Emergency Response Team, and Wendy with the Arlington Neighborhood Village. So we have a full house today. Each one of our speakers is going to spend about 5 minutes max on their challenges, opportunities, and resources. And we highly encourage you to ask questions in the chat, give recommendations in the chat, because after all, this is all about collaborating. So without further ado, Elizabeth, you are up.
Thank you. So one of the wonderful things about this role, I started 2 weeks before Kim. So we've kind of come up together and have really had a chance to learn together and be collaborative and get to know each other better. And it's been wonderful and really share resources and ideas with each other. And I was thrilled to join you guys today for exactly that reason. So in Clarendon, we actually incorporate both Clarendon and Courthouse into our area, into our footprint. And obviously we have a ton of retail and a ton of restaurants and small businesses within that area. We're really known for the dining, which has been a very interesting challenge, probably the #1 challenge aside from events that we've been facing over the past few weeks. At this time of year, usually we would have put on an art festival. The Arlington Festival for the Arts is every year in April. We have our huge cycling event end of May, June, and we would be doing also Bark in the Park. So we had 3 major events and had to really think through how we were going to handle all of that as this ever-changing information was coming out throughout February and March. One of our events canceled entirely and just pushed all the resources towards next year. One we've pushed forward to September, and we're hopeful that that's going to be able to happen. Bark in the Park was canceled as well for now. We're really thinking hard about Clarendon Day. That's the big one for us. I mean, we're talking about challenges. That's our biggest fundraiser of the year and our largest source of revenue. So if we are not able to hold that on September 26th, we have to really think about Plan B. So that's been top of mind for myself and for the board. And we've already started exploring some other ideas in terms of virtual events, in terms of auctions that could raise money, even going with the vendors and creating virtual booths online. We're going to be throwing out a lot of ideas on our board meeting tonight and really thinking through how do we make up that lost revenue that we need in order to survive. So that's one of the big ones for me right now. But much as Kim said, we've really had to pivot. So this time of year, I would ordinarily be doing events. Instead, I focused the majority of my energy on COVID-19 and supporting our businesses in a whole new way. Thank you to Kim for giving me the contact she used for banners. We were able to get a phenomenal price from Morvang and something that we could afford to do for free for our businesses as well. So ours are turquoise, not orange. You've got the turquoise and orange behind you. It complements. So bright turquoise all over Clarendon. We've handed out 21 banners to restaurants and to businesses. It's been really interesting to see. We got a lot of requests from businesses who just want open for business so people know that they're there. One of the ones that I love to talk about, and I've mentioned a few times in my social media, is Kinderhouse Toys. You see those silver linings. They really did pivot when they realized what was happening and turned it into curbside toy pickup. And as a mother, I appreciate that so much. It's not just restaurants doing the curbside pickup, but when you're losing your mind with your kids and they've played with every toy they have and you need something new to keep everybody going in the household, you can order ahead of time. And they also have kids masks, which are very hard to find, hand sanitizer, and all those resources. They've been really smart about the way they've approached it. So I've loved what Kinderhouse is doing. And we're hoping more businesses are going to see that model. We've been sharing it with our businesses and saying, look at what they're able to do. You know, can we find those silver linings and pivot? Kebab Bazaar is another one that just cracked me up. I went in there and they were selling, you know, their regular dinners, but they also were giving away a free roll of toilet paper to everyone who came in for takeout. They were doing all kinds of fun things. People are getting really creative. That's the fun part of this, is that you see people start to really think outside the box when they have to, when they're pressed into that corner. Some of our businesses have closed entirely, and that's been incredibly disheartening. But then you see these other examples of ones that are really getting creative and having fun with it and saying, okay, what can we do to make this work? Those are the ones that are going to be successful, truthfully. We have a few sadder cases. I had my first business close yesterday. I found out it was a small niche boutique, so it was not terribly surprising. It was Olive Oil Boom. That being said, they're going to a fully online virtual store, which for them makes sense right now. But you know, you do hate to hear those stories, and we're just praying we're not going to hear more, especially on the restaurant end. We have 3 restaurants that were set to open in April, which are now not opening. That being said, one of the things that we're all doing as a group, Ginger, Kim, myself, all the bids, the chamber, I know we're all on the same page, is we're really focusing on making sure that the county can give outdoor dining options for our restaurants. One of the new restaurants in particular is very small. They simply will not be able to open unless they have that outdoor component and can use more sidewalk space than they would ordinarily be permitted to use. So that is the most top of mind for, I think, most of us here right now, trying to make sure that we get that availability for flexible sidewalk space, even some street closures. We're looking at, you know, small areas that don't have a lot of traffic in Clarendon, especially right now. Can we expand some of those out for some outdoor seating for our restaurants? So we're making that specific request to the county. I think it's just really interesting to see how all of our roles have changed. This wasn't an area I was particularly focused on before. I was really more focused on the event side. And it's actually been great because I've gotten to go out and speak to so many of our businesses on a different level and, you know, say, what can we do to help you? Another kind of fun one that one of our board members came up with was, you know, doing more social media boosts for these businesses. So We're already doing a lot of social media around our restaurant saying, hey, you know, look what Courthouse Social is doing tonight or whatever it might be. They're selling growlers, by the way, which I love. But, you know, is it a way that we can do something else with that? And so what we've done is we've started posting and then boosting those posts just for a few dollars. It really doesn't cost a lot, but gives us a lot more, you know, visibility throughout the DC area for people to come into Clarendon and go to those restaurants. So that's been hugely successful this week. We were amazed by the response to that. We targeted DC, Alexandria Falls Church, and Northern Virginia and Maryland, Bethesda area, and we just have gotten a massive response back from just, you know, $10 even of boosts about our restaurants that are open. So we're trying really hard to listen to what they need and relay that to the county and be that umbrella for them and be that voice. One thing that's been interesting is not all of them still know, even though we think that everybody's getting all this information about the grant funding. I've had several, you know, had no idea until I sent them something. So we're continuing to be the conduit for information and make sure that everyone is aware of the emergency grant funding and of what's available and out there for them in every way. Amidst all of that, we were right in the middle of a huge website overhaul, and we were getting a new software membership system that was supposed to launch this week. That got put a little bit on the back burner. Yeah. And it's one of those things too, where, you know, we want to make sure that we have all these resources available on the new site as well. So that's going to go live in June. And we'll obviously have a slightly different focus with a lot more COVID resources than we would have ordinarily had on any of that community page. It's going to be much bigger than what we ordinarily had. So, you know, that's what we're doing right now. And the banners, the social media have been great, helping connect and make sure everyone knew about the funding sources. And just, you know, making sure that we're all talking to each other and sharing resources whenever we can. If one person has a great idea, you know, passing it along and saying, hey, this worked really well for us, or hey, this didn't work really well for us, or this is what our restaurants need, this is what our businesses need, and sharing those success stories. And
that's awesome.
Here we are. So.
No, and we really appreciate it. We know you've been incredibly busy, and we appreciate you being here today. It's all about connecting, and I think you also used the word conduit. That's a perfect word. So we definitely want to be conduits to the rest of the community. So next up, we have Ginger Brown with the Lee Highway Alliance. And Ginger, the floor is yours.
Well, hello. I'm excited to be here with you today. I've been actually working with these ladies on a number of things, but I'm the executive director of the Lee Highway Alliance. We are also a partnership, just like CPRO and Clarendon Alliance. We're a little different in that we are in a different stage of our sort of where we are as an organization. We're only a few years old, and most of our focus up until now has been on the replanning and revitalization of the Lee Highway corridor, and we're going through a massive planning process, much like Columbia Pike did a number of years ago. We are actually at a critical point. We have a character analysis report coming out, and they're going to be starting height and massing studies this summer. So interestingly, just where it was in the process with the consultants and with staff, it's actually a good time for them to be working at home on it. So we're lucky to report that it doesn't look like it's going to be delayed very much. So that is kind of ongoing offline behind the scenes, and we look forward to having that move forward. But the Lee Highway corridor is hasn't been replanned in over 50 years, which makes our retail a little different than other places. I think Columbia Pike is probably more similar. We have a lot of one-story retail, 1950s strip mall retail, large surface parking lots. We don't really have public plazas around the retail. So much of when we've been working with our businesses and our retail shopping centers to figure out what they need to get through COVID, they need space. They literally just need more space to operate outside once the reopening begins. Otherwise, they're not going to be able to survive. We had our first closure today with a Adagio ballet, so that was sort of sad too. Yeah. Businesses, we don't have any large regional businesses other than our grocery stores. We have some chains, but we also have a lot of mom and pop shops, which is great, but it's also harder because they don't have as many resources. So we've been working with those folks to figure out how to bring more flexibility and adaptability to the zoning. So we've been working with the bids, but we also worked sort of on our own, which focusing on the private commercial spaces because we have so many with big parking lots. And we recently, last week, we wrote a letter to the county board and to the county manager laying out ideas for how you can change the regulations or process for businesses or shopping center owners to get an automatic approval for increasing their outdoor space. That might mean taking parking spaces or reducing their parking requirements. It might mean using landscaped areas where they could actually remove the landscaping that is usually required in their use permit. And then using for classes, putting tents up, different pedestrian walkways, lots of things that our shopping center owners were saying would be helpful so that they can hold classes outside. It wouldn't just be for restaurants because we do have a lot of these retailers and we have a lot of kids activity providers and other that would probably like to hold classes outside if they were able. So we were hoping that the county will not just look at restaurants and but also look at using the space for other things. We're lucky in that we don't have a lot of sit-down restaurants, or they're mostly fast casual. So many of them did take out anyway, which was, so a lot of them are sort of beefing up their takeout options, and hopefully they are, I know that anecdotally that some of them are making it, but barely. So, but as long as you hang in there, that's what we need. So the county did respond, and I don't know, is Matt on? Is in from the county board on the call? I'm not sure. For the county board, but I did hear that the county manager does have a task force that they're putting together, staff internal task force, and they're working very hard on these issues. So they've heard from the partnerships, the bids, the chamber, and maybe Scott knows a little bit more, but I definitely heard directly from folks that they hear us loud and clear. So I do think that there will be changes coming to make it easier for businesses to hopefully have more space, literally, to do business outside. I think that's, people want to feel safe, and I think people are going to feel more safe outside than they are in cramped spots. So we've also had some real successes. We have a little farm, an indoor farm on Lee Highway that actually provides some of greens, or they provided greens to some of the highest end restaurants in DC. Okay. And they literally lost 100% of their business overnight. Oof. So, but interestingly, they are now, they have a sign up. So they were able to get a number of folks along the corridor to get fresh greens, these wonderful greens, every week delivered to their door or picked up at the farm. So it's pretty neat. So my kids get to try edible succulents and edible flowers and all these kind of crazy, amazing greens. So it's been actually really fun. So there is some silver linings, and they've totally retooled their entire business overnight.
Wow, it's amazing. You guys are doing such great work. No, and I want to find out where that little indoor farm is. But you mentioned one thing, Ginger, that I failed to mention earlier. The county has been extremely flexible, lifting the signage restrictions with Columbia Pike, helping us transfer temporarily our permit for the farmers market across the street to a larger space. So we do want to say thank you to the county for that. So
and wonderful.
Yeah, absolutely. So next up we have Scott Pedowitz, who's with the chamber. And let me put his slide up. Here we go. And he looks a little different. Scott, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Kim. Yes, that is pre-COVID me. Also very nicely done, wonderful photo from Lawrence Cheng Photography. probably gets that extra little bit of sheen there and polish. The reality can't just measure up. But yes, good afternoon. My name is Scott Pedowitz. I'm the Government Affairs Manager at the Arlington Chamber of Commerce. We are Arlington's Chamber of Commerce. We have about 700 members, ranging from solopreneurs and mom and pop businesses all the way up to global companies with headquarters or main locations in Arlington, like Boeing, Nestle, and Amazon. We also include more than 100 nonprofits in our membership, including all three of the partnerships from whom you have just heard, and all three bids, and so much of Arlington's social safety net, which is awesome. It's just a great bit of community. So, when we are talking about the chamber and kind of what the chamber is about, we often say there are 4 pillars of chamber membership, and that is networking, which I think is the one we often think about first, community engagement, advocacy, and professional development and education. And what we have really done over these past, 10 weeks now, is take those pillars and pivot them for the realities we face in the coronavirus world. And that is evolving over time as we went from, that very quick, very intense crisis response, trying to figure out which way was up from back in March, to figuring out how we can move along through that. So for example, on the education professional development front, we have for a long time held a monthly small business roundtable. It's kind of a lunch and learn event that we do once a month, lunchtime, usually in the Vita Fitness boardroom in our office. That has gone virtual. And the last 2, the March and April, we haven't had May yet, but the March and April small business roundtables pivoted to COVID-related topics. So we had a discussion of the labor law around COVID in March, and internet meeting security and technology, and remote work security in April, and trying to get those ideas in there. We have held more webinars than I can count with our elected officials. There was a week or about a week and a half where, it's like, oh, it's another webinar with Mark Warner, things that we were able to bring together. We had Governor Northam, Don Beyer. We had a webinar with Congressman Beyer hours after the House passed the CARES Act. I actually think President Trump signed it while he was on the call with us, being able to get those responses in real time. And partners also, not just at the state and federal level, but with the county. We did a program with the county board chair, Libby Garvey, and Shannon Flanagan-Watson, and Telly Tucker, deputy county manager and the head of Arlington Economic Development. We also co-presented with the Biz Launch team tools for helping your small business go through, in a webinar about the grant program. Tara Palacios and I kind of co-presented, or she presented, and I asked a lot of questions. A webinar about how you could, apply for the grant program. So really trying to take that education aspect for our members. Networking, I think a lot of people, I see a lot of friends in the participants list here, are very familiar with our Breakfast Connection and Business After Business, where we come together and get together in person. That hasn't been possible, but we did our first virtual Breakfast Connection last week. It was a tremendous success, because that give your pitch, talk about businesses, collect information, that still works. We've learned how to do that virtually. We've started doing virtual social hours as well, to try to keep that up and running, and that is hugely important. Community engagement. Kind of 2 stories on that. Number one, we every April have Arlington Chamber Volunteer Day, where I mentioned that we have about 100 nonprofits in the membership. They can put in for projects, and members can bring their teams out, and we usually get together and eat some pizza, and we then go off and split out and help our nonprofit sector. And it's about doing the projects, but it's also about building those connections that you might come back and be able to do more. We held Arlington Chamber Volunteer Day about a month ago. We did it virtually, so you had to bring your own pizza. But again, Don Beyer came and actually moved a meeting, because when we said, hey, Arlington business people are getting together to come and help our nonprofits, he's like, I want to be part of that kickoff. Came and gave us a kickoff, and then we had virtual projects, some via Zoom meetings, some you could do from the comfort of your desk. I helped one of our nonprofits, was looking to kind of build a list of resources and contacts, and I made a nice little spreadsheet. I actually like making spreadsheets, but it was great to do it for a good cause. So really happy to do that. but also helping to continue the networks. Both Kim and Elizabeth mentioned the work that their organizations are doing on signage. And I like to think we got to be a little bit of a fulcrum in that. Kim reached out to us, CPRO was brainstorming that up and going to work on that. And tossed it our way. We have a number of sign companies in our membership. We said, oh, this is an awesome idea. Reached out to all the sign manufacturers and sign retailers in our membership and said, is this something you'd be interested in doing for businesses or being out there, and put it in our weekly e-news and said, hey, if you're looking for a "We're Open" sign, here are places you can contact. And then Elizabeth contacted us and said, hey, I know Kim's doing that and CPRO's doing that. I would be interested to see, and we were able to kind of bring that connection on. So really using that community in the way that we're able to pass along good work. And then finally, because I think I'm probably running long on my time, the fourth pillar being advocacy, the one, as you can imagine, as government affairs manager, I attend to a bit with more regularity.
You're very good at.
Thank you very much, Kim. We try, but it's also helping to make sure that we are supporting businesses and supporting an environment to help businesses. We know this is challenging for everybody in keeping those lines open. I think I'm now the fourth person to mention outdoor dining. We sent a letter to the county board too, and encouraging that Arlington County show that flexibility. Actually, flexibility was the watchword of that letter, that the county, uncharacteristically for it, really jumped in and said, these are unusual times. We need to be flexible. Let's do the sign thing, and said, let's continue that up and be able to work together. So hopefully we'll be able to see movement. And I don't have any specifics that I can break on this call, but Ginger, I am hearing good rumblings as well, but being able to stay in that. And then also just helping as we continue through whatever our future is going to look like. I don't think any of us on this call knows that. Being able to help our members, help businesses, because Arlington was super strong coming into this, and I think that strength will be with us at the end, but it's going to take some intentionality to make sure we're listening to everybody, helping our businesses, setting ourselves up for the best success during and through the pandemic. And we also have our COVID Resources Center, and I'll pop the link in the chat box, but that's
awesome.
Chamber in a nutshell in these times.
That is a lot in a nutshell. We really appreciate your work, Scott. And please feel free to put whatever links you want in the chat. Let's definitely connect, because it is about connecting and flexibility. And for time's sake, next up we have Allan with the Arlington County Civic Federation. Allan, thank you for joining us. The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Kim. Thanks, everybody. So I want to talk real briefly about the Arlington County Civic Federation. A number of you are probably familiar with it already, but just a little bit of a background. So the Civic Federation was founded in 1916. So it's been around for 104 years. And we represent really bottom-up mechanisms for folks in individual communities and other organizations to bring their voices to the table and get them heard. We think there's power in numbers. So today we have about 90 member organizations, and all of them are dedicated to community involvement and advocacy. We represent a broad array of interests and talents. There are folks at every level in the county, in government, as well as just in individual community organizations that are represented and have been represented over the years on the Civic Federation. And our purpose is to promote the general welfare of Arlington County and vicinity in a, quote, nonpartisan, non-sectarian, non-sectional, and non-political manner, which has some challenges to it, but we really do our best to do so. So there are a number of improvements in Arlington going back, like I said, well over 100 years that are a result of actions that initiated or actually strongly recommended by the Civic Federation. One of them is the county manager form of government. That's one of the very first things that the county Civic Federation got involved with. Our actual sewer and water systems, if you can believe that, and do not blame us for the flooding that happened.
Uh-oh.
The central post office, better schools, master zoning ordinances, many different community initiatives. We have monthly membership meetings. We don't meet in the summer, but from September through June, we have monthly membership meetings, usually the third Tuesday of every month. Up until the coronavirus pandemic, we were meeting in the Arlington Hospital in the Hazel Auditorium. And I took on the role of president coincidentally right before all this happened. And so it's been somewhat of a challenge to figure out how we were going to handle it. So we've actually had our second meeting via Zoom last night, and there have been some, some interesting challenges. It brings some new opportunities to the table. One of them has been the fact that we had about 90 people last night on, and we had Parisa and a couple of other resolutions. And the chat discussion thread was really interesting to monitor. You've all seen discussions on like news articles on Arl Now or on Facebook or whatever. And you typically during a membership meeting, people are they're talking amongst themselves a little bit, but by and large they're paying attention. And if they really want to talk, they go outside. So it was nice to see. I tried to let it go on as long as I could, but it got a little bit sticky towards the end, so we had to cut it off. At any rate, so there's really new opportunities, and we think that going forward we'll probably try and continue doing this. We shall see. And but again, it is not just a substitute. I think it really does enhance the way that we can provide service to the county. We've done a lot of work. We have a lot of the county government and the governing structure of the county, they present to us and we present to them depending on different resolutions and initiatives that our members find of interest. A good example of that recently is a livability 2000, I forget the zip code, initiative. Several, like 4 civic associations right around Crystal City had a number of initiatives going on that they created their own livability initiative focused on affordable housing and livability in a number of ways. And that was presented directly to the county, and the county manager and the county board have adopted a number of those actual resolutions coming up from the county. Over the years, I've been personally involved before I became president on the schools committee. And one of the things that we did was we identified the capacity crunch. I'm not saying that we deserve credit or blame for this by any means. Obviously, there are forces that work beyond our ken, but we did analysis based on what folks in the community were telling us who had real quantitative analysis backgrounds and the ability to, and we were able basically to use projections of various factors, birth rates, the rates of people moving in, the rates of children coming out of apartments versus single family homes, many, many different factors, right? And we projected a huge capacity crunch and did a report and a presentation to the school board and the superintendent. And they did re-look at their numbers and the parameters around them and hired a consultant. And so that's just an example. And obviously we know what exactly has happened since then. And we continue to advocate based on both the needs of the children as well as what the community is telling us.
Yeah.
And we try and balance all the different organizations throughout all of Arlington, north and south, civic associations as well as nonprofit organizations. Yeah. We have regular presentations to our organization every year. So the school board presents to us, the superintendent presents to us, the county board, the county manager. We also always have the state and congressional delegation to the extent that they're available.
Yeah. And
then every fall we have candidates night where anybody who's running for office and up to and including, from county board, school board, state and local, state Senate, state House, as well as congressional and Senate candidates come and present to us, and they have a mini debate. And that's always one of the highlights of our year.
You guys, your calendar is full. You do so much. One of the things I'd like for people to kind of weigh in on the chat is, Allan, the work that the Civic Federation does is to really be a conduit, to be a voice to all associations within Arlington. But what policy changes or what flexibility do we think we're going to need in the future? Because things may be different in the future. As you mentioned with schools, do we need the school capacity now that kids are learning from home? I don't know. That's just a question. So it's going to be interesting, Allan, to see the work that the Civic Federation does moving forward.
Absolutely. And I will have to apologize because I have to leave in about 2 or 3 minutes. So if there's any questions or in the chat, Kim, you can get them to me afterwards.
Absolutely. And please put questions in the chat or just ideas or suggestions. Thank you so much, Allan. Next up, we're going to change gears a little bit. We have Les Garrison, who's with the Community Emergency Response Team with Arlington, and they've played an active role in past disasters and past storms and past things, and currently play a role today. So Les, I'm going to turn the mic over to you.
Thank you. The Arlington CERT is a completely volunteer organization. Our mission is, in the event of a major disaster, to save lives and reduce injuries in Arlington, activated by Arlington County Emergency Management. In less than major disaster situations, Arlington CERT trained people acting as good Samaritans save lives and reduce injuries wherever they are. Our major challenge right now is that like perhaps 1 or 2 other people in the world, we've been caught short by the coronavirus. Although some of we shouldn't really have been caught short in that you know, some of us back in the 80s read the book Outbreak and the totally unrelated movie Outbreak, but nonetheless, had we been thinking in terms of a coronavirus, I can see many things in our training that might have been done very differently. Although we emphasize PPE, I can see vast areas of increased emphasis in that. Nonetheless, our biggest challenge right now is that CERT training is a very hands-on, skills-oriented sort of person-to-person training. We actually practice on each other many of our skills. Obviously, we can't do that. We've taken most of our lecture training, and we're currently in the middle of a online series to cover all the lecture that we can cover. That's a major concern with our training. With actual operations, we have not yet been activated. I talk with emergency management frequently, and we're not being activated because at this point the missions appropriate to our organization and training and our equipment have not happened at this point. We remain ready, and we take a long view of this thing. I hope to be, I hate to be Leslie Downer, but the fact is that we're going to be dealing with coronavirus at least until June of next year. So the opportunities for helping in various ways they're not going to be going away anytime soon. In the long haul, the things that we offer, basically at this point we have 300 trained volunteers who can do a great many things. We have been, in fact, not called on in some occasions because the county has so many employees that have been sent home, and many of those employees have been used for a number of the functions that we've discussed, because they're getting paid and they want to do something. So that has limited our volunteer participation in some of the things that we might have been doing. Those are the resources that we offer is trained people in training. With the limitations on our training that we can't do much of the hands-on stuff, we're looking at that, how we can best do our hands-on training after the coronavirus problems are dealt with, how we can do it, many problems. But that said, the CERT is sort of a gateway to disaster and emergency preparedness volunteering. Because of our emphasis on disaster preparedness, a great many CERTs, I've had to remind people not to be smug about the fact that you've laid in extra supplies for the possibility of disasters. And I think the other thing that the CERT offers is not a paranoid mindset, but a mindset of preparedness. And I'll finish on this. Our ID cards, our CERT ID cards, all bear the expiration date of 10 September of whatever year they're expiring. It's 10 September because we remind people, and the question comes up with every new training class, what do you think is going to happen? And I remind people that on 10 September 2001, very few of us knew what was going to happen the next day. And if we did know what was going to happen the next day, we should probably be in jail. That was on the lighter side there. But I'll stand by at this point and wait for questions eventually.
No, thank you so much, Les. What I love about CERT, it does encourage preparedness and being trained, but what you also do is you're connected to the community. You guys do buddy systems, you do neighborhood captains, which I think is so crucial during this time, in alignment also with the Arlington community, what do they call it? Arlington, shoot. What are the
Community Core.
Thank you, Community Core, ACC. So thank you, Les. And finally, but not least, we have Wendy with Arlington Neighborhood Village, who they have boots on the ground. They're doing great things. Wendy, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. You know, sometimes it's good to be the last speaker, and other times you sit there and go, oh my God, they already said everything I was going to say. So luckily, I'm not in that last position. I do, though, want to start off with a question in terms of what do we think the word of the year is going to be going forward. 3 words I think we've all used. One is pivot, the other is retooling, and the third is silver lining. So, you know, at some point we can all vote on what we think the word of the year will be. But let me tell you a little bit first about Arlington Neighborhood Village. There's the before and current storyline. Arlington Neighborhood Village is, for the most part, a group of volunteers that are helping older adults age in place. And we use older adults because some people don't want to be called seniors. But essentially, we're talking about people who are 60 plus, who want to stay in their homes and community for as long as possible. This is where they've grown up. This is where their families are. This is where their life is, and they'd like to stay in their homes. But there gets to be a point when staying in your home is just really difficult. The easiest thing to talk about is when it gets to the point where you're not able to comfortably drive. You know, we certainly live in a community that cars and, you know, getting on and off a bus is an important way for all of us to get around. And as you get older, sometimes that becomes a challenge. Or there's a challenge getting up on a ladder and changing a light bulb, or a challenge getting to the grocery store. So what Arlington Neighborhood Village, it was something that was formed around the kitchen table of some folks who lived out on Route 50 on the West End, saying, what can we do to help our neighbors age in place? And from that conversation, Arlington Neighborhood Village was formed in 2014. And so what we do is provide services and support to help older adults age in place. If you looked at last year, we provided 2,000 services to our members. Of those services, 1,500 were transportation, rides to the doctor, to the grocery store, to the bank, to the post office, to a haircut appointment. You know, you name it, we were giving people rides. We were helping them around their house with minor chores. We were getting up on ladders, going into the attic. We were helping them with technology. We were walking buddies. We were friendly visitors. In addition to those services, we also work to reduce social isolation. So people who are indeed in their homes and communities and not able to get out. That was the before. And then, like everyone on this call, there's the here are we now. And where we are now is still continuing to provide those services to older adults in the county. The services have changed. We do far fewer transportation, just a handful. But what we predominantly are doing now is errands. We're helping all of our members and more than members with errands. We go to the grocery store, we pick up prescriptions. We do a little bit of transportation when someone absolutely has to get to a medical appointment. We help people work with technology in their homes, walk them through telephone support. But what COVID has actually done for us, though, is permitted us to pivot and to expand our reach in Arlington County. We had a goal at the beginning of the year that talked about growing our membership, and in particular, growing the reach and diversity of our membership. And that would have been a challenge because all of us know the difficulty of outreach, marketing, promotion. But instead, we've had this phenomenal partnership that we've now formed with folks like the Arlington Food Assistance Center, with the Arlington Partnership for Affordable Housing, with Meals on Wheels, and certainly with our Department of Human Services, where older adults who need help, who are not our members, are able to come to Arlington Neighborhood Village. And we've essentially created what we call temporary memberships. We've eliminated our membership fee, we've waived it completely, and we're at the point that any senior in Arlington that needs our assistance, we're helping them. And we're helping them because we have volunteers who are stepping up and responding to those requests. You know, in the sense that I'm talking about helping older adults stay in their homes and community, we do this because we have volunteers. And much like Les was just talking about, we've got 250 volunteers that do everything for the village. Not only do they provide the direct services, conduct the errands, give people the rides, help with technology, but they also do everything to run the village. So there are phone answerers, they run our committees, they make our technology work. So between supporting members, older adults, everyone in the county who needs some assistance, and volunteers who are stepping up, that's been our retooling. And like others on the call today, we think that's going to be the world that we live in for the near future. While there are going to be some people who are going to find it comfortable to step out of their homes and to engage with people, you know, the challenge will be, we think, for older adults, a reluctance to do that. So that the circumstances they find themselves in today are likely going to continue for the foreseeable future. I used to call that the near future. Now I call it the foreseeable future.
I know.
People are going to need the same
It's
kind of
good.
support that we're offering now. So, you know, we will continue to help our older adults, anyone in the county who needs assistance with grocery store runs and what we essentially would obviously call contactless engagement. We're grateful to organizations like the Washington Forest Foundation that provided extra support along with Amazon through a rapid response fund that the Community Foundation was able to get out to many nonprofits. That's making much of what I've just talked about possible. When we had to move from a work environment to a telework environment, that for us wasn't just, you know, packing up and changing our location. We had to do everything. We had to buy a laptop computer, get a cell phone, find some volunteer who would make it all work. And we continue to struggle with that to this day. It works, but it doesn't work perfectly. But the Washington Forest Foundation and the Community Foundation were very generous in a grant that permitted us to put some of those pieces in place. So I know we want to get to questions. I hope I've given people a good enough sense of what it is we're doing, but it's certainly, you know, an issue of connecting and collaborating around the county that I think we are a perfect example of the silver lining
I would agree.
in terms of.
No, it's great, Wendy. I actually was on one of Wendy's Zooms, was it 2 weeks ago? And I have to say, you made it look seamless. You guys did such a fabulous job. It was fabulous. So we have about 10 minutes for questions. I think we've had a few come in through the chat. Amanda, do you want to read us the first question?
I do. One of the biggest questions that I know we get asked at CPRO, and then I'm sure a lot of you guys have gotten asked by your respective businesses that you're serving, things like that, is about the reopening. You know, Northern Virginia has set a delayed reopening, and I know Arlington County has had some different guidance and various things come out. So I wonder if perhaps, Scott, if you could let us know a little bit more about what you've heard from businesses, from the chamber member businesses, and then maybe even Ginger and Elizabeth, the businesses on Lee Highway and in Clarendon, how they're feeling about the reopening, what steps are being taken to prepare, and what reopening might look like in Arlington in the few weeks when it's
Foreseeable future.
foreseeable future. Yes.
Yeah, and you know, I actually have an eye appointment this week. I mean, I don't know how good my vision is to the foreseeable future, but so just to make sure everyone's kind of on the same page, Governor Northam earlier this month introduced the Forward Virginia Plan, which basically is for a phased reopening of the Commonwealth with continued protections and requirements. The early phase one, is the best defined. Beyond that, we kind of have broad outlines. Most of Virginia entered phase one last Friday. An exception was made at the request of local governments for Northern Virginia. So basically that's Arlington, Alexandria, Fairfax, Prince William, Loudoun, and the kind of small cities and towns dotted within that: Falls Church, Manassas Park, Fairfax City, I think one or two other places, and City of Richmond and the Eastern Shore, which had some particular issues. So we are still in phase zero. Phase one's actually not very different from phase zero. It removed some restrictions. We were delayed until next Friday. I have not heard anything to suggest we are not on that path, but you know, haven't heard anything with that. I think where a lot of our businesses are looking, and everybody has their own angle. The big questions we're hearing are, you know, people are thinking about how to get reopened and to do it safely. I would actually say that I hear how a lot more than when. That, you know, everybody wants to look after their employees' well-being, their customers' well-being, and to get a sense of how do we start to get back. We know we're not going back to business as usual or the old normal, or, you know, March 13th is a distant memory at this point. But really folks are looking at that. We're seeing a number of resources coming out about how to do that, and that's something we're going to look to do to help provide support for our members and for the community to make sure that as people are comfortable and able to get out and about and do more interaction, we're doing it safely so that, you know, we're looking after everybody's well-being.
Okay, great. And Ginger or Elizabeth, have you guys heard anything specific from your area businesses about the reopening that anybody's planning to do, or any concerns they have about the reopening?
You know, it's funny, one of the things that's come up 3 times this week alone are the roof decks. People feel like because they're outside, they're safer. But I've had to point out to all of them that you also have to go up narrow stairwells to get to most of those roof decks, and people have to pass. So we've talked about, you know, how do you control that flow of traffic going up there and ensure, I mean, we see what happens in Wisconsin when people come to bars and they start drinking and they start getting close together. And there was a case last night, I think on the news, with a nightclub infected 20 people. I don't want that to be Arlington. So we're really trying to counsel our restaurant and bars, even though they desperately want to open, just to take the precautions they need to take and to do it in the smartest way. It's scary to me, truthfully. I won't mention names. One of them really just said, we just want to get open. And I say, I know you do, but, you know, we can't be responsible for, you know, more COVID cases because we have too many people in this area. So, you know, the smart ones, the ones who understand, the ones that, you know, it's not the smart ones, I shouldn't say that. The ones that get it, that understand that the true safety concern, are really thinking about how they bring customers in, how they control flow, restroom cleanliness, all those things are factors. But I have a few who are just wanting to open. And it worries me, I'll be honest.
I would just say, I would concur with Scott that it's not when, it's how. And really focusing on the health and safety, but also how to increase and change their business in the current environment.
Mm-hmm. Our next question kind of feeds right into that in terms of, you know, once everything reopens, does perhaps Scott as the closest one to most county entities, if you've heard of anything of how the county is maybe ramping up any contact tracing for when we do reopen, and how are small businesses participating in that contact tracing, and if there's anything new to share on that front, if anybody has information on that.
Yeah, I know we don't have anyone from Arlington County on this call.
Next one.
I would refer that to the county. I do know at last night's county board meeting, the county manager, Mark Schwartz, did talk a little bit about looking to get up contact tracers. I don't know if there's a specific application, but the county also does have a coronavirus resource page on their website, arlingtonva.us, that links right up at the top. And if that's something that is interested to you, I do know they said that they want, again, looking at the participants list and how well networked everybody here is in the community, what they said, what I do remember them saying is to, if it's something you might be able to do, you need to be well networked, you need to be able to be discreet and respectful, because you're going to be dealing with people in uncomfortable, awkward, intimate situations. So you have to be able to be comfortable and comforting, and people with broad language skills and broad community skills, they said, because the idea is to kind of get a hold of that whole network. So if that's you, I check the county website.
And I think we may have future speakers in mind for future sessions. Amanda, what else do we have?
Our last major question is really specifically to Ginger, when you were discussing about how various business, not just restaurants, were looking at ways to get more outdoor space outside of shopping centers and things like that. One person in the chat did ask what specific type of street space is needed. Is it more for pedestrian circulation around businesses? Is it for seating? I know you mentioned classes. What other kind of options, or what is the space needed for, and if you've engaged with VDOT about some of that space?
Right, that's a great question. There's been a lot of discussion about that. There's actually sort of two major people thinking about that. One are the transportation folks that want more room for pedestrian and bicyclists to safely get to the shopping areas. And then the second is mostly from the business owners who just need more space for tables and tents and literally just space to do their business outside. So those are sort of two different issues. We actually, the first sort of either shutting down streets, and you have to understand this isn't in the, Idaho is a little different than, say, shutting down a street in Roslyn, or where there might be a really compact, large area that it might work. But most of our retail is centered in these 1950 strip malls. And so we really focused on the private commercial space versus shutting down the streets. And so it's safe to say that it was pretty controversial within our own membership to shut down, to even consider shutting down parts of Lee Highway. And people might be more open to shutting down a side street or a lane in a side street, but there wasn't that many examples of where it might make sense, which maybe is different than some of the more densely packed corridors. So the answer is no. We haven't engaged VDOT because there wasn't any consensus even close to it within our own sort of stakeholder group that would be worth our time.
So you're looking mostly at, you said private areas, so like parking lots, things like maybe, another person did kind of piggyback on that about if school or church parking lots, or even county parks that are currently closed, if there's a way to let businesses use those park areas.
Yeah, and nobody was opposed to necessarily using parking spaces that were public. So that would be on the table, and or looking at parks too, but we don't have that many that are who are retailers. So, and then people were also, for our parks, which are a little different than plazas in urban areas where it might make sense to serve alcohol or have nobody along our corridor there was a lot of discussion about whether it would be a good idea to allow alcohol in parks. And there just weren't enough of them near our restaurants to really, again, there would be a lot of discussion, a lot of stakeholder engagement that may or may not be worth our time. There's a lot of other things, low-hanging fruit that we could be working on. But that it doesn't make sense in other parts of the county.
It's interesting, a shameless plug here, repurposing space. It will be announced in a press release next week, but you're hearing it first. A drive-in movie theater at the Career Center.
Love it.
That's awesome.
Oh, that's cool. That's awesome.
So go thank APS, go thank the county, but don't thank them till next week.
We're still waiting on our final special event permit sign off, but we've been told that our CPRO's Columbia Pike movie nights, we typically do in the summers, we can try to transition those to a drive-in, so they are safer. We won't have people gathered in parks this year. We'll be gathering at the Career Center parking lot.
I think Roslyn or Crystal City is doing that as well, right? Or Ballston, one of the others is doing it.
Boston.
I believe Boston, yeah, is trying to do a one-night movie night.
At the Gold's Gym.
That
Outside in the parking lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's interesting, and I think taking all this together, it really does come back to the importance of flexibility, because I think going back to sort of the frame of the question, we could say, well, what do we need on this block in this neighborhood, and it's, well, does that work? But as Ginger alluded, right, here's what Lee Highway's looking at now. Columbia Pike's looking at something differently. Roslyn, Clarendon, Ballston, Crystal City might look for different things, and having those broad approaches are there. The other thing, and just sort of to take that point and make it even more general, one thing that I'm observing throughout this entire period is that the coronavirus pandemic resists simplicity. This lays bare, not just in Arlington, I think all around the globe, all the complexities and all the interrelationships that usually come to be. And so, if there's one thing I'd encourage everybody is, as we approach looking toward reopening, as we approach looking at what either businesses or schools or community groups, are going to need to kind of make it go and really deliver the value that they deliver. I think you heard that in all the groups today, thinking less about here's how we do it, but here's what we do, here's the value. Being able to kind of think about, all right, what are we trying to accomplish? How can we get there? And looking at everybody's goodwill and coming together and continuing to do that. I think that's
So well said.
awesome for Arlington.
Scott, that was perfect. That was great. I wanted to make sure we finished up at 5:35 as I promised everybody, and we have 2 minutes. So I do want to pitch our next connecting and collaborating session. It's going to be on Friday. It's focusing on diversity. It's with Eddie Campos for crew, Abidi. We also have Patty Finegra, and we have Claudia Salazar. So this should be a very interesting session. Please spread the word. We only can fit 100, but we want to fit 100 folks, because these are unique communities who are doing unique things. We'll put in all the words here, Wendy. They're pivoting, doing silver lining. Give me some more words. Retooling, but they're making it work, and they're doing great things for their communities and the broader community as well. So we're excited to hear from them. And then this is how you can follow us. We want to connect, we want to convene, we want to collaborate, we want to keep up these connections. So if you missed a question today, please email us, please throw it in the chat. We will make sure that this recording gets up and published so you can share it or go back to it. And Amanda, any last comments in the chat?
No, just a lot of people saying thank you, everyone, acknowledging everyone doing such great work. So yeah, thank you everyone for joining us.
So I have to say thanks, Elizabeth, Ginger, Scott, Allan, Les, and Wendy. Namaste, stay 6 feet away, Wakanda forever. You guys rock. Thank you for all the work that you're doing.
Thank you.
And we're gonna do a go team. Ready? 1, 2, 3, go team. You guys take care. Be safe, everyone. We'll see you next time.
Take care.